Apologies for beginning while being on mute. So let me begin again, where you can actually hear what I'm saying, hopefully. This is the Aquarian Renaissance Roundtable Freaky Friday edition, where I will be sharing a spooky nonfiction story, reading from The Overview of the World System of Bondage and Separation from Life by Kenneth Scott of the House of Cousins, published on the Gemstone University website, which is at gemstoneuniversity.org. So I'll be reading to you and showing you the document. This crazy story we find ourselves in. Um, Normally, this call, the Aquarian Renaissance Roundtable, is a free weekly open discussion, open invitation for anyone interested in the concept of an Aquarian Renaissance, of uh, emerging from the watery age of Pisces, which is appropriate for what I'm going to be reading uh, to this evening. Um, it's evening for me already. I'm in Montenegro, and so there's no trick-or-treating happening around me, as far as I can tell. And um, so if you're interested in the Aquarian Renaissance Roundtable, it's a free weekly gathering, and we discuss topics from freedom through lawful means, reclaiming our original innocence, our indigeneity, our creatorhood, alignment with divine will, and with the truth that we are emanations of the one source, uh, experiencing life here on the earth in partnership with many beings, the plants, the animals, the elements, um, all one and yet many. And the Aquarian Renaissance to me represents a celebration of those many different perspectives, honoring the uniqueness in each one, valuing that uniqueness, which is contrary to the global trend of globalism, of sameness, as they say in that book, The Giver, um, of conformity, which is what the previous age was also about. So much fear in the collective human psyche, much trauma from war and satanic ritual abuse, and a number of awful things, which we will not really get into in this edition. They may be too freaky for this Freaky Friday. Uh, we're going to get more into the kind of the structure of the legal system. And so I'll get right to it because there's plenty to get into with that. Welcome, and please leave a comment, send a message if you're interested in the Aquarian Renaissance in general. Normally, I don't broadcast it live. I'm the only one on this evening. Um, so this is what I do if nobody turns up, is do a broadcast live. And so I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I'm already doing that. Okay. I am screen sharing. Okay. Which tab? This is the tab I wanted. Screen share. Okay, cool. So, Gemstone Global Media Alliance, bringing truth to the world, an outreach project of the Pantera de Oro, now called Pantera de Vida, private society. This is a data document. But anyway, here it is. An overview of the world system of bondage and separation from life by the living man, Kenneth Scott of the House of Cousins. This document may be distributed publicly, but may not be altered. Copy claim under seal of the Pantera de Oro Court of the Ecclesia. All intrinsic liberties and unalienable rights reserved. Publication must include site references, which we have done. Here's a quote from T.S. Eliot in his poem, The Four Quartets. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown, remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning, at the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard in the stillness between two waves of the sea. The dedication, this document is dedicated to the future, to the one we choose to create for our children and the many generations to come that will live in a world of peace. Aho. Note and acknowledgments. This paper is considered an overview, not a definitive work. Each point and every footnote contains significant amounts of research done not only by the author, but many associates and team members over the last 30 years, as well as the authors of websites and articles linked. Therefore, the reader is cautioned to consider this a guide for further study and research. This work can effectively be considered a one-year postgraduate study guide in areas of law, history, and money, as well as considerations in the esoteric and multidimensional scope of things. For those who are serious in the pursuit of real freedom. Okay, part one, the nature of bondage. Introduction and overview. This presentation is put forth as a brief yet comprehensive overview of the history and legal structure of how we have become the indentured debt slaves of the world system. It will also integrate broader concepts of an esoteric and multidimensional nature that infuses the world system, unknown to most, as it follows the esoteric maxim of hidden in plain sight. The word indenture means to attach something of value to a contract, whereby the attached value becomes the bonded surety, guarantor, for the performance of the contract. We have all heard of the term indentured servant. This refers to a man or woman who voluntarily attaches his labor and life, the value, to a contract to serve for a period of time in return for some form of consideration as reciprocal value. The contract forms a trust. The life and labor are the initial corpus property of the trust, and the party providing the immediate value in exchange for future labor is the trustee and holds the value within the trust for a named or potential future beneficiary. An example is when a man wished to come to America in the 1700s or 1800s, and during that time it was gender specific to men only, and would agree to be an indentured servant to pay for his passage to the New World because he did not have money to pay for the passage. So instead, he exchanged the value of his future labor for the value of the passage on the ship. The contract of this agreement is an indentured grantor trust. The man is the grantor, and he places his future labor into trust as the initial value and property to be held in trust. This creates an indenture. The interest, the future labor, thus held can be sold as a means for the ship captain to be paid upon delivery of the man to the American shores, and that end user is the beneficiary. A plantation owner or other principal buys the contract. The captain is paid, and the new owner now has an indentured servant that will work for him until the terms of the arrangement are fulfilled. If that total payment is extended longer than the contract calls for by additional charges being applied for upkeep, rent, food, or whatever else, the term might be extended for a longer time, or even indefinitely, as summed up in the lyrics of the song 16 Tons, and the line, I owe my soul to the company store. That's a Johnny Cash song. Uh, The story you are about to read is about how the souls of the entire world population have been bonded, indentured, and sold to the company store, and just exactly what that store is and who owns it. The grantor trust is essentially an indenture that bonds the value of the initial grant into the trust body, the corpus, and now the legal title and control of the trust is vested in the trustee, and the equitable value is vested in the beneficiary. In the case example, the ship owner is the trustee of the beneficial rights and interests of the future labor, which in turn can be sold or exchanged forward to someone or some group on the other side of the passage to America to take control of the indenture trust corpus, future labor of the man, and thereby become the beneficiary. That person or group is also in effect the beneficiary, and when the trusteeship and beneficiary are vested in the same person, the trust collapses due to a merger of title. Now the plantation owner holds full title to the future labor of the indentured servant. In this manner, when the man wishing passage enters into the agreement, his future labor is hypothecated in a form of monetization. The trust agreement becomes a negotiable instrument that can be bartered, traded, or sold to another party upon arrival in America. This is the basis for the bonded indenture relationship that almost all humans are held within with respect to their government and central bank in a network of corporations across the world in the guise of nations. Such a relationship is voluntary and yet cannot be broken unless and until the obligations attached to the indentured trust servant are settled and extinguished. Therein lies the rub. The pledged value exists in the future, but the bonding is established in the present, and if the future settlement is never achieved, the bonding/bondage endures from birth until death. The function of creating any kind of trust creates a split title, as there are two titles in a trust, the legal title held by the trustee and the equitable title held by the beneficiary or beneficiaries. This point of a split title trust is important to understand because when we speak of our current status and attachment to the public debt system, we are speaking of grantor trusts and indenturing of future value. An additional point within the definition and function of an indenture is that it creates a form of bonding of value, and bonding means a secured interest in that asset or value which is attached to the debt or obligation. When we speak of secured interests, we are also including the context of a guarantor of the debt, stated as a bonded surety. Such a trust has been created for almost every human being in this world, and this function is hardwired into the standardized process that meets and greets a newborn baby anywhere on the planet. The primary focal point for such a creation of bonded surety status ensues from the mother, unbeknownst to her, who dutifully follows the narrow pathway provided for her as she is cuddling and enjoying her newborn son or daughter. To be free of that bondage, we must collapse the grantor trust created by our mother that she established as the original grantor. These points will be key components of our discussions in this document. On the record of live birth, the functions of the mother constitute a registration in which she is characterized as the informant, which literally means she is putting her newborn into form. As the newborn grows into adulthood, he or she will thenceforth have to place data into the myriad of forms in the public domain to get anything and everything desired and required for life. The trust created splits the title and attaches the baby to the trust as an indentured servant, with the hypothecation of all future labor, value, and wealth against the future performance of the indentured servant. This creates a public person, and all actions we take in the public are structured so as to maintain the public persona as a debtor facility. Every instance of creating a document with the name of the person on it become negotiable instruments, and all such negotiable instruments issued in the name of the person, all capital letters, are done as monetized debt. The reason we capitalize those two words is very specific and will be discussed further on. Our future value is monetized via the public persona, known in legalese and defined in Title 26 of the United States Code as a person, in the name of which all public commercial paper and negotiable instruments are created, monetized as debt, and then circulated in the public as currency. Once the original person is created, every instance of the issuance of any documentary draft, medical certificates for every instance of any medical act performed, utility bills, tax bills, court orders, traffic citations, rent agreements, mortgages, ad infinitum, are considered publicly circulating commercial paper that perform as currency as they flow through the system like the current of a river or stream through its banks. They are also considered and acted upon as bonds, and a bond is evidence of both a debt and a private trust relationship. That persona is the all capital letter name United States person, or the equivalent in other national corporations created as a franchise of the bankrupt United States. The United States is a corporation that was formed as a government services entity after the Civil War between 1866 and 1878. A government services corporation is not a lawful government. It is a municipal corporation that functions in commerce, not law. See the Clearfield Doctrine. Clearfield Doctrine is basically uh, the conclusion that the government is a for-profit uh, business that operates for the purpose of making money. And then it has to be treated on equal grounds as any other for-profit business. It's not, you know, it's just a corporation basically. The entity incorporated and named United States and later United States All Capitals was the municipal area of Georgetown and the District of Columbia. It was placed into bankruptcy on March 9th, 1933. See the discussion below for proclamations 2039 and 2040, and was thereafter and to date controlled as a foreign military occupying force under international rules of bankruptcy, admiralty law, conquest, treaties, and global monetary policies. The occupied country was the original organic United States of America, established as a perpetual union by the Articles of Confederation, also discussed below. This is, of course, a complex structure beyond the scope of this paper to fully describe, but a synopsis understanding is imperative if we wish to understand our world system today and how we are in bondage to it as perpetual debt slaves. Equally important with this understanding is how do we effectively remove ourselves from this status of bonded surety to a bankrupt franchise. To understand all this, we must proceed with clear definitions of the words and phrases we are using, such as debtor facility, franchise, bonded surety, commercial paper, negotiable instruments, uniform commercial code, monetized debt, and others, all of which shall be defined and discussed herein below. Additionally, knowing how some of the complete distortions pertaining to the founding of the country, variously known as the United States of America, United States, and other variants, are equally necessary. Suffice to say, they are not the same thing, as will be discussed. All in all, the understanding of definitions, legal terms, root etymology of words, and other methodologies of bait and switch tactics done over the centuries to achieve confusion, obfuscation, and cognitive dissonance, which is, by the way, the original definition of war, are essential for us to understand the nature of our condition in this reality and how to find the pathway to freedom and release from bondage. This document will provide the framework and details of how one can then undertake the research, knowledge development, and practical means to a true solution to achieve such freedom. I'm going to stop there for a second, right before the what's in a name section, and just um, have a look at my YouTube here. Uh, I'm gonna just rest my voice and take a drink. That is ginger tea, and it is so gingery. Ginger, ginger, ginger. I'm gonna name this document. I rename it reading from. No, it's not made for kids. Hold on one second, you guys. I'm just putting it the description. Reading from the overview of the world system of bondage and separation from life by Kenneth Scott Cousins. And the website. Document freely available at gemstoneuniversity.org. Okay, and we just save that. All right, that's it for that. I'll go back to this. What's in a name? To begin, what is a debtor facility? It means that it is an entity that is used to facilitate the issuance of some form of documentary instrument that is a debt, and that then becomes currency to circulate in a commercial system that most refer to as money. That system is controlled by something known as the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC, a modern system that was actually created in Roman times some 2,000 years ago and evolved through medieval times as the law merchant, also known as lex mercatoria. Both of these terms and the function of mercantile law harkens back to Roman times and Roman civil law, which itself is an extension of the law of the sea, that is, maritime law. The UCC is the final modern derivative of these millennia-old forms of law that pertain to merchant ships, vessels, and commerce, issue insurance, and bonding of cargo held in the hull of such ships. In short, the modern UCC system defines relationships between debtors and secured parties and more subtly established bonded surety insurance attachments to the collateral or cargo, thus insured and secured. Any and all publicly issued documents such as tax, utility and service bills, court orders, traffic citations, medical records, and others are all forms of commercial paper that have the name, all capitals, on such documents as the debtor, and the party to whom the bill is payable is the secured party. Because these are all issued pursuant to the UCC, they are referred to as commercial paper. When commercial paper has two signatures on it, they are considered negotiable instruments, which means they can be negotiated from one party to another by being passed on, which is what is done with the Federal Reserve notes we call dollars. Notice the two signatures on every FRN, Federal Reserve note. The Secretary of the Treasury, who is the secured party representing the creditor, the International Monetary Fund, and the Treasurer of the United States, who is the debtor, representing all the pledged collateral of the nation, including the people and their labor. You can always replay this, guys. In this relationship, the item, person, or thing attached remains the secured collateral, but as each negotiable instrument is passed from one party to the next, the party currently holding the instrument is known as the holder in due course. This is no different than when the man on the European shore placed himself into bonded indenture as discussed above, and upon arriving on the shores of America, the ship owner sold the interests in the indentured trust of his future labor to a plantation owner who thereafter can utilize the hypothecated labor and thus become the holder in due course of that indentured value. Thus, every U.S. citizen is designated as a person, all caps, via the franchise with the name, all caps. In aggregate, they are bonded as collateral against the debt issued as commercial paper, negotiable instruments, and monetized debts, Federal Reserve notes, in the name of the franchise. The same is true in every nation in the world that has a central bank as a bank of issue, a bank that holds the exclusive power to issue money. Thus, when we are born and the original trust indenture is established, the person as the name becomes the primary nexus by which we are attached to perpetual debt from birth until death. Our status by virtue of that attachment is a bonded surety to a bankrupt franchise, an indentured servant by our own voluntary acts, or complacency, I'll add, or ignorance, I'll add. That sounds complicated, but it is actually very simple and something we do every single day, all day long. Every time any piece of paper is issued with the all capital name or upper lowercase, which is just a variation of the same linguistic trick, as the name obligated party, we are using the facility of this entity to create monetized debt with said name as the debtor. This means it is the debtor facility. Still sounds complicated, right? It will become clearer as one proceeds through this presentation, but all should be advised to truly integrate this material takes time, diligence, and a commitment to release old belief systems and programmed limitations within our personal reality. This will be discussed further below, but it is important to note that this is the case, and any reactions one has to this information, whether anger, resistance, reaction, disbelief, cognitive dissonance, and other variations thereof, indicate coming up against programmed structures within us. Next, we ask the question, what is monetized debt? Monetized debt is created when the United States Treasury takes the aggregate total of its collateralized franchise and corporate subdivisions and issues bonds against the hypothecated value of the future work potential or the future work potential. That's labor, services, manufacturing, etc. of the population so indentured. It then sells the bonds to the Federal Reserve, which in turn issues Federal Reserve notes, FRNs, that circulate as money. This is the function of monetizing debt and converting it to money. Everything that is issued in the debtor name, henceforth the name, all capitals, such as utility bills, traffic citations, court cases and judgments, tax bills, and medical records, are in fact forms of debt that will become part of the hypothecated value that is monetized, so that they create currency as money. These forms of debt are bonds, and all bonds are evidence of debt and bondage. In bonded debt, there has to be a debtor, as well as the entity, individual, or that institution that provides a security or guarantee that the debt will be paid, known as a surety. Thus, we are the bonded sureties. As living beings, we are in fact the surety to all monetized debt issued in the name that appears to be our actual name, but is in fact a linguistic trick that converts a normal name into a franchise of a larger entity. That larger entity is the bankrupt United States. Thus, the name, which is spelled as our name but is in fact not the same, is a bankrupt franchise, and we are the bonded surety to all the debt, seen and unseen, that is attached to that name. These names are called franchises because they are facilities by which we can use this system and participate in the field of commerce so that we can eat and travel and purchase goods and pay our rent. The franchise is also considered a commercial vessel, indicated if we review something called the Government Style Manual, issued about every 10 years by the U.S. Government Printing Office, wherein it defines any name written in capital letters as the United States ship, the USS John Henry Doe, for example. But more insidiously, for every public instrument issued, there are in fact hidden bonds attached to the instrument that are never seen by the public. For example, when a court case is opened with the name as either plaintiff or defendant in civil cases or indicted party in criminal cases, numerous bonds are issued that remain even after the court case is settled. In criminal cases, if the indicted party is convicted, a penal sum bond is issued to bond the surety while he or she is incarcerated. These bonds can last up to 30 years and are traded over and over again long after the prison term or parole or probation is served, and even after death. A bonded surety to the franchise is the purest form of bondage. How do we know the name is a franchise? The easiest and most self-evident way to know is to consider that the taxing authority for individuals in California, for example, is called the Franchise Tax Board, thus indicating that personal income tax in the state of California is really a franchise use tax. The difference in our case is that there is no determined time for the settlement of the debt, and as long as there are open accounts and bonds attached to the name for which we have volunteered to be the surety, we remain in bondage and servitude. More importantly, what we see in the public in terms of debt, money, and currency is only the tip of the iceberg. More insidious to this is the fact that for every unit of monetized debt as $1, there can be as much as 10 to 100 times more hidden bonds attached to each commercial instrument issued in the name. Such things as driver's licenses, marriage certificates, deeds of trust, mortgages, birth certificates, and even every form of registration have these forms of hidden bonds that are multiplied, traded, increased through mirrorings in the creation of derivative instruments, and much more. The key to our status is that it is voluntary, whether we know it or not, and the entire world system is constructed to provide the illusion of choice because all of the detail is hidden in plain sight in all the contracts, agreements, applications, accounts, and other forms of engagement that we enter into every day of our lives. This is perpetual bondage within the illusion of freedom from cradle to grave. The conversion of a proper name in the English language to an entirely different entity altogether, as the name, all caps, is known within and derived from something called the Justinian deception. A definition of history, according to Gemstone University. History is the record of a progressive storyline undertaken to establish a globalized system of law in order to therefrom derive a system called money for the singular purpose of establishing an artificial reality construct of ownership of the world's people and resources. So the people thus owned and controlled would be managed and directed for the purpose of extracting the world's resources to build a global prison into which the people are maintained in a perpetual system of cultivation and harvesting, along with another system called religion that was created in order to perfect belief systems so that the people would voluntarily bind themselves to the reality system and thereby accept the entire construction as justification for their existence being placed into their own self-created bondage and enslavement system with little resistance, rebellion, or objection. Talk about Freaky Friday, guys. Read the description of history in its entirety, then read the bold underlined portion as one sentence. All right, let's just go to the bold underline. History is a progressive storyline for the singular purpose of establishing an artificial reality construct of ownership, so the people thus owned and controlled are maintained in a perpetual system of cultivation and harvesting, with another system called religion, so that the people would voluntarily bind themselves into their own self-created bondage and enslavement system. It's a mouthful and an empty belly. In short, in fulfillment of the above definition, world history is the story of how all the people in the world have been placed into bonded servitude, which has been established as individual indentured trusts that bond their future labor to underwrite the perpetual monetized debt system. In order for us to understand how this works within the world system, we must first set the foundation by understanding some basics about the primary systems of law and money. Take some ginger tea. See if anybody is watching. Did I even say this? Well, anyway, are we still live, guys? Yeah, we're still live. Anybody tuning in? Leave a comment if you are. Let me know if you've heard of this before. If it's all brand new, what do you think? I'll continue in the meantime. Oops, wrong one. This one. An overview of the world system of bondage. Okay, I just read the footer. Most of the world's people have lived little, if any, clue as to what these systems really are and how they have been designed to be the code of the matrix over the millennial process of history leading to today's world system. Law and money are the flip sides of the same coin known as history. Today's codified legal system is a hybrid system derived from origins in law. These origins include two primary areas of focus known as law and equity, but as well are interwoven with many other law forms and jurisdictions, civil, maritime, admiralty, commercial, and even kingdom and ecclesiastical. Law has to do with agreements, contracts, and the settlement of disputes, reparations for injuries, and penalties for criminal offenses. Equity focuses on issues pertaining to beneficial interests in trusts and estates. It also includes expanded issues in law that had to do with relative equitable interests from contractual agreements. When a contract includes fair and equitable consideration, the parties of the contract receive fair and equitable compensation for their interests during the course of the contractual arrangement or otherwise. Without fair and equitable consideration, there is no valid contract. A valid contract is one that is based on true equity and balanced consideration for all parties. Equity is balance. So that was part one. I'm gonna just let you guys chew on that. course, you can always go to gemstoneuniversity.org. There should be a link in the description. You can check that out and read for yourself and follow the footnotes, and look into this. Uh, Perfect thing to do on the Freaky Friday of Halloween in the United States and coming up to the time when the veil is thinnest, according to many ancient traditions, um, when the spirit world is reaching into ours. And if you read further in this document, there's a discussion about that, um, how this artificial overlay, construct of the legal system that we participate with in the form of commerce is basically the realm of the dead, right? Because it's a fiction that we believe in and give life to uh, habitually. As it mentions religion, religion is essentially those things which we do habitually, right? We bind ourselves in the form of habits. We are free and naked until we put on our clothing, our habit, as is known in a monastery, which then covers us. And there's interesting discussion on this word cover from Curtis Kallenbach in his Supreme Being life. If you look up that website, supremebeing.life, that's another interesting um, source of knowledge around this deception, the matrix reality, false reality, which we are entrapping ourselves within, unbeknownst to us, uh, through the tricks and treats, right? Giving incentive for us to participate in the form of all the things that money can buy. Um, and on the flip side of it, it's actually debt and is essentially, as it was talking about maritime law, um, is essentially the realm of the dead, adrift in the sea of commerce. And uh, the quest that we're on is to return to the land, uh, and uh, to reestablish ourselves as the living, on the record, um, so that we can use the book of life. We can be, instead of history having the definition that's given here in the overview of the world system of bondage, we can have a new story, his and her story, our story, be in the book of life and not the book of death. Uh, and so that's the little bit of rainbow sunshine, hope, and potential, destiny, you might say. Our great uh, opportunity at this time is to reconnect with the living in every way, you know, through that Christ consciousness, that divine breath of our inherent creatorhood. uh, we can move with the impulse of life, tuning into that and letting it express itself fully through us as us, and as our worlds um, that we conjure into being by the action of perceiving them, right? Um, we are, uh, I think Kenneth describes it as virtual reality projecting units. Holographic, holofractographic emanations of the one life, incarnate in the form of these personal energy fields and uh, the bodies that grow out of those. And uh, so we are creator beings, remembering our true identity, slowly but surely. Some of us quickly, and maybe there's a quickening at this time right now, some people I know speaking about uh, the quickening coming with aid from messengers in the heavens, like the uh, Three-Eye Atlas comet that's just rounded our sun yesterday and is now heading back, passing our region of the solar system. And so anyway, lots to integrate there. As I said, I'd encourage you to look deeper and come back in a future Freaky Friday edition for part two. Let's see. I've begun reading this document on this YouTube channel a few times actually in the past, and yeah, I mean, if I created a system to read through more of it, it might be interesting. Let me know if that's something you'd be curious to hear. Of course, you can read it for yourself, and they have an audio version on the website. So that's why I don't feel that motivated to continue all through the whole document. Um, but it's something to catch your attention and introduce you to this uh, well documented and well explained um, overview of the world system of bondage, which we are destined and challenged to rise from and transcend. So this is why I am here to help that come into manifestation to achieve the transcendence of the falsehood, the narrative of history, creating a global prison. Uh, let's have a global paradise instead, and uh, plenty of also freaky, but freaky in a good way, high frequency solutions that I am connected with and excited to be bringing forth uh, in the now and the immediate future. So stay tuned for that and welcome to be a part of it to uh, to realize the greatest possible dream that we are all here to dream, the dream of life to the fullest, of care, of putting the kind back in mankind, and uh, coming back together, celebrating our differences, celebrating our unity, and cherishing the moment. So happy Friday, and see you again soon. Welcome to join me for a future Aquarian Renaissance Roundtable. Lots of love. This is Keegan signing off and figuring out how to stop the screen, this stream.